Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to another edition of Lumberjack Logic Live. I'm your host, Neil Johnson. Always excited to be with you. Always excited to share the news with you, my fine, loyal audience. Please smash that like, chat in with where you're from. Always excited to see who's on the stream. Lisa, thanks for modding for me this morning. Good to see you. She used to live in Minnesota. Minnesota is going to feature prominently in this stream, as is Texas, but it's really endemic of a whole host of problems in this country right now. And as the Trump administration continues to clean things up, and they are doing an amazing job of that. In fact, I think John Brennan might be next on the indictment list. I mean, how many of you want to see John Brennan indicted? News on the street is it's coming. Okay. So just curious how many people be excited about that, because I'm telling you, it might be the indictment I've long been waiting for, folks. But this is a big story because we have problems with our election systems in this country. And Dominion getting bought by a quote unquote Republican conservative is not the solution to our problems. We may dive into that more, but I know a lot of people are running a lot of clickbait titles out there about how Dominion bought by Republicans, left freaking out. Yes, the left is freaking out. That's the left, not, but you're going to notice, folks, that it's the people on the left who are buying this narrative. But in reality, the problems with electronic voting will still be there. They will still be there. So, without any further ado, though, I want to bring this into the show this morning. And let's talk about this. Texas has found thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote on the state voter rolls. Now, I know we were told by the left this doesn't happen. Illegals can't vote. Remember, let me just pull this out for a second, but do y'all remember when the border crisis was happening? Many of us talked about the problem with importing voters and how the left was just trying to get more people in to vote for them. Now, there was multiple reasons behind, the open border policies of the Biden regime. One of which is to inflate the population in blue districts, okay, which then give the non-citizens actual representation in Congress, even if they don't vote. But the problem is we were told that none of them would vote. None of them would vote. You all remember this? And I think many of us were calling this, well, that's BS. They're obviously bringing them in here. They want them to vote. They want them to inflate the census numbers. They have used them to inflate the census numbers, which has been a big problem. But look at this. Thousands registered to vote on the state voter rolls. Now, Texas and Ken Paxton have been better at prosecuting voting crime than just about any other state out there. But I'm going to do something for you here. I'm just going to play this video about the Department of Justice, and you guys have seen this under the Trump administration, working to clean up voter rolls. But what happened in Texas exposes a massive problem in Minnesota and other blue states as well.
Administration looking to boost election integrity as the DOJ opens a nationwide investigation into voter rolls. The department is calling on local officials to identify felons, dead voters, and also non-citizens who might have cast a ballot. David Spunt is live from Washington with more on this one. Hi, David.
Hi, Aisha. Good morning. Today, next week, the week after, and so on, DOJ officials will continue to work on what they call the department a serious problem with our voter rolls. This all stems from a March executive order signed by President Trump, which states in part, the Attorney General shall, consistent with applicable laws, coordinate with state attorneys general to assist with state level review and
Okay, I'm just trying to pause this here for just a second. So this all comes from Trump's executive order. Others like Minnesota are not.
Prosecution of aliens unlawfully registered to vote or casting votes. Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed her team to check counties across the United States, but California is a big focus, as is Texas and Minnesota. The DOJ plans to prosecute any foreign nationals that get caught voting. A DOJ source tells Fox News election integrity.
Folks, why would Minnesota, answer this in the comments below, why would Minnesota be one of the big focuses? Okay. Multiple reasons.
Integrity starts with clean voter rolls That's the foundation for secure elections. There's been this DOJ is cracking down. Now, the Justice Department wants local officials to identify and remove felons, dead voters, non-residents, and non-citizens from voter rolls. Recently, the department charged an Iraqi man for illegal voting in 2020 in the state of New York. Took several years to catch that one. Last year, a 19-year-old Chinese national was charged in Michigan with perjury and attempting to vote illegally in the 2024 election. Now, Aisha, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOJ, took a big hand in stopping illegal voting. Even though Elon Musk no longer with that agency, DOJ itself still has a hand in this movement. Finding illegal voters will take time, but the Justice Department is in regular contact with the White House about the latest progress fulfilling this executive order. Aisha.
Okay, David Spont, live for us. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so here. Oh, this is actually a good story too, but we're not going into that right now. All right, let me just pull this out for a second. So they have found that these non-citizens are registered to vote. Now, if they're registering to vote, if they're taking that step, folks, and they're non-citizens, what do you think the likelihood is that they voted? Now, talking about the dead voter issue, I've told this story many times, but I went to the Michigan Secretary of State website 2 days after the 2020 election and looked up multiple dead voters who had voted. They died in like the 80s, the 90s, 2000. Come on, they voted, folks. I mean, they cast a ballot. It's right on the Michigan Secretary of State website. So this is the whole issue with cleaning up voter rolls. And for those who don't understand how elections are stolen, you can create a vote, but you got to have a paper trail. And the way they get away with this, and I don't think we ever want to get away from a secret ballot, but here's the thing. Once that vote is cast, if these state attorney generals and secretaries of states do not cooperate with the administration, they cannot be compared against the federal database. So we don't know. Now, I found an article of Steve Simon in Minnesota saying, well, we're within the law. We're not giving over this information. Why wouldn't you give over the information? Why wouldn't you work to clean up election integrity? There's only one answer for this, folks, but answer in the chat. Why would you not work with the Department of Justice to put forth election integrity, to ensure that the people who are voting are American citizens? Because once the vote is cast and there's no identifier attached to it, and it's just that piece of paper, how do you know? See, this is how you can go do, we did a recount. We are just recounting the same things. If the votes were cast fraudulently, it doesn't matter if you recount that same vote, does it? I mean, wait, we did a recount, a hand recount. We didn't even use a machine, folks. We counted the votes. But yet, if it's not compared against the actual list of people who voted, you don't know. And here's the other thing. At that point, you don't know who they voted for because it's a secret ballot. And we want it to be a secret ballot. But you don't know. That vote's just in there. That's why mail-in ballots, COVID, everything, folks, everything we've covered. You guys know this. Multiple strikes on YouTube, all that stuff. Now, apparently, we're able to talk about this. Now it's not a conspiracy theory. Now it's part of the public forum. Now it's part of the discussion. Let's have a discussion about this. They were having a discussion about it before 2020. Don't you remember when all the Democrats were saying that the machines were stealing it and Trump was illegitimate? Gosh, drives me nuts. Speaking of election integrity, Mike Lindell, who's done more for election integrity than most people thought about doing. mypillow.com/lumberjack for big savings on the best sleep products available, folks. Get your Christmas gifts from people who like you. I'm serious about this, man. Don't order from Amazon, for Pete's sakes. 6-piece towel sets are back in stock, $39.98, very limited quantity. These always sell out. He has trouble keeping these in stock, partly because of the attacks against him on election integrity and all the lawsuits. He has to then fund the company with money coming in and then sell out things like the Percale bed sheets, which we won't be seeing again. But right now you can get for only $29.88. Those in my audience who have ordered the Percale sheets, comment in the chat what you think about them. Every single product Mike Lindell makes is awesome. I haven't experienced a bad product. Okay. The slippers are awesome. I love these energy drinks. Look at this premium pillows, $17.98 and $19.98 right now. One of my favorite products by far is these Giza sheets. They are more than the Percale, but you will absolutely love them. There's no going back. Once you go Giza, there's no going back, folks. The mattresses, all of it. If you're thinking of getting a mattress right now is the time, because check this out. This is what's so cool. Free shipping on your entire order. That includes the mattresses, which are very expensive to ship. If you ever thought about getting a new mattress, now is the time. Utilize the free shipping with promo code Lumberjack or mypillow.com/Lumberjack. I actually called the 800 number, 1-800-568-2865. Again, that's 1-800-568-2865. I'm gonna go back now, since I just found out that we've got all these non-citizens voting. So these are the stories that were being run. This is from the Brennan Center for Justice. This is why, folks, I am so excited. The Brennan Center for Justice. Why I'm so excited about Brennan's upcoming indictment. Listen to this. The damage from conspiracy theories about non-citizen voting. Some states have used false claims of voter fraud to make it harder for eligible voters to cast ballots. Now, folks, here's the problem. Non-citizens are not eligible voters. And we have just learned, let me bring this back, okay, right here. Oh, wait, it was the one previous. We'll go back. Here it is. Texas finds thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote on state voter rolls. Secretary of State Jane Nason sells 2,724 potential non-citizens flagged through federal database crosscheck. But yet they were running stories like this in the Brennan Center, ABC, protecting your vote. Okay, what is this one? Protecting your vote in South Texas. The myth of non-citizen voting takes center stage. Again, Texas finds thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote. The myth of non-citizen voting takes center stage. Why does anybody take the mainstream media seriously anymore? Do they get things right on occasion? Yes. Yes. Are some of the polls accurate? Yes, they are actually. There are pollsters that are accurate, pollsters that are not. Okay, we've covered that before. But this is what they ran. Now, I want to go down in this article and I want to show you something. The data came from a full comparison of Texas's 18 million registered voters against federal citizenship records in the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services SAVE database, according to the Secretary of State's office. Only eligible citizens may participate in our elections, Nelson said. The Trump administration's decision to give states free and direct access to this data set for the first time has been a game changer. So here we have the Secretary of State of Texas saying that the Trump administration giving this information has been such a big deal. Okay. So, but here in Minnesota, what do we have? Fed has to sue the Minnesota Secretary of State and demand voter registration records because they're not willing to cross-check. Okay. That's what's going on in Minnesota. So the U.S. government is suing Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon to obtain, statewide election and voter data. Secretary Simon said earlier this year, the state is under no obligation to disclose the information. There have been a total of 10 cases of voter fraud in Minnesota since 2016. So this is from a Minnesota media outlet. Of course, there have been only 10 cases. Folks, let me ask a question. Do you honestly think for 1 second that in the state of Minnesota that they are serious about prosecuting illegal aliens voting in elections after the Ilhan Omar trunk ballot display going on? And of course, then there's the Ilhan Omar brother marriage. I mean, do you think there's any interest in Minnesota from Attorney General Keith Ellison, from Secretary of State Steve Simon, or from the governor of our state, Tim Walz, in pursuing election integrity? Do you think there's any possibility that they are really serious about doing this? Any? Like, gauge in the chat a percentage from 0 to 100 0%, there's no interest in pursuing it, to 100%. They're after this, man. They're after the program. They're getting these illegals prosecuted for voting. This is nuts. This is what we're dealing with. Okay. So one state just simply cooperates to then check it against the federal database so they can determine if non-citizens are voting. And then we have Minnesota that has to be sued. But it's not just Minnesota, folks. Other blue states are doing the same. New Hampshire is another one where, by the way, there's a big story there because, and I hope to get this one covered. If I cover this story, I hope to God you guys watch it, because this is one of the problems with YouTube world is you're always searching for the story that people will actually be interested in, and then it's titles and thumbnails. But in New Hampshire, a Supreme Court justice in the state of New Hampshire who committed a serious crime in talking to the governor about her husband trying to get preferential treatment has got, after just 2 days off, is back on the Supreme Court. I'm not kidding you. I mean, will you guys watch that if I produce that video? Because I kind of want to, but I don't think it's got enough interest, to be perfectly honest. I guess I'd title it with New Hampshire something. Anyways, if you guys will watch it, I'll produce it. It's a wild story. Yeah, it really is. Let's go back here. All right. I get so. The Minnesota Secretary of State is being sued by the federal government over allegations that election integrity was violated under the HAVA Act, okay, Help America Vote Act, that President Trump signed earlier this year, okay? According to complaints submitted by federal court, Secretary of State Steve Simon must provide a copy. Somebody wants to jump on the stream. I'll let them know they can. Okay. After a complaint submitted to federal court, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon must provide a copy of the state's full voter registration roll and proof that the state has audited its tolls and removed registrants who are ineligible. That seems like a simple request, but check this out. Let me go to, oh, come on. Where'd that go? It should have had a, let me see here. Minnesota, here we go. Minnesota voter rolls, Trump. Let's try that as a search. I want to show you another article. DOJ serves democracy docket. Here we go. So this is here, Minnesota Reformer. I want to go to this one. By the way, let's go to About Minnesota Reformer so you can understand what we're talking about here first. The Minnesota Reformer is an independent, nonprofit news organization dedicated to keeping Minnesotans informed and unearthing stories other outlets can't or won't tell. We're in the halls of government, tracking what elected officials are up to and monitoring the powerful forces trying to influence them. But we're also on the streets, the bars and parks, on farms, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Oh, who's running it? Oh, editor-in-chief. J. Patrick Coolican. J. Patrick Coolican is the founding editor-in-chief of Minnesota Reformer. Previously, he was a Capitol reporter for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Okay, for those who don't live in Minnesota, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune is always nationally rated as one of the top 5 most leftist hack job papers out there. Where else has he worked? Knight Wallace Fellowship at the University of Michigan, and a time at the Las Vegas Sun, Seattle Times, another wokester paper, and a few other stops along the way. He was named Journalist of the Year by the Minnesota Society of Professional Journalists in 2025. Folks, he thinks this is a badge of honor. I am going to tell you, if you are voted a top journalist by a bunch of other liberal journalists, you're not a top journalist. Okay, this is so I want you just to understand that before we go into the article itself. Okay, and the article itself is a Q&A with Secretary of State Steve Simon, who the Trump administration is suing over voter rolls. So we're going to get Steve Simon's response. The U.S. Department of Justice is asking Minnesota to hand over its voter registration list. Secretary of State Steve Simon is refusing, and now the DOJ is suing Minnesota and 5 other states that have rejected the Trump administration's request for voter rolls. The DOJ has reached out to more than half the states in recent months for voter lists, Stateline reported. Thursday's lawsuit targeted 6 states that have refused to hand over the voter registration data: California, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania. I should have a guest from New Hampshire joining the show here momentarily. President Donald Trump has long pushed false claims. Wait. So here we go. Here's Mr. Objectivity. Remember, we read all this crap. This is Mr. Objectivity. President Donald Trump has long pushed false claims about American elections, including the lie that he won the 2020 election and the claim that non-citizens are voting in mass. Again, folks, let me take you back. Here we go. 2,724 non-citizens flagged, illegal immigrants registered to vote in the state of Texas. But this is all a lie. It's all a lie, folks. It was the most safe, the most secure, the greatest, everything. Okay. I get worked up about this. All right. Look, folks, this is what got me into doing this. I started this channel. I mean, I had a channel because I watched stuff on YouTube, and then I was in video production, so I'd share it with realtors, but I didn't have any subscribers. And then I started covering the election of 2020 in November of 2020 because I was so upset about what had happened. And I was told it was the most safe, the most secure. For somehow that just didn't resonate with me. I didn't think it was. But now, here he goes. President Trump has pushed false claims and the claim that non-citizens are voting. In March, Trump directed U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to seek information about suspected election crimes. The DOJ has since shared voter information it collected with the Department of Homeland Security. So this is what happened in Texas to identify all these non-citizens. The reformer interviewed Steve Simon, who has held office since 2015, about the back and forth over voter rolls. This interview has been lightly edited for length and clarity. Can you outline why you are saying no to the Department of Justice request for Minnesota's voter registration list? Steve Simon responds, this starts and ends with the law. We ask ourselves the question, what does the law say about whether or not we can transmit very private and personal information on millions of Minnesotans to the federal government? Okay, do you know why this is a crock of crap? Because the government already has your information. You do realize that you have a social security number, right? And that the government has your address. They have all this information. So what is the problem of sharing a voter registration database that contains the last 4 of your social security number, your address, your birth date, things that would allow you to be identified as citizen or non-citizen against the federal database? This is a complete fabrication, a complete crock of crap. They are trying to get libertarians or independent-minded conservatives who value privacy, which is a good thing, to side with them in this argument because it's about the law and it's about privacy. And why would we hand over this sensitive information? How many of you, let me ask you a question. Since this is such sensitive information, how many of you are concerned about the state of Minnesota, or your state for that matter, sharing your voter registration data with the federal government? How many of you are concerned about that? Come on, how many? Yeah, you have got to be kidding me. Your driver's license number, the last 4 of the federal government is the one who sets up the social security numbers. And we know that illegals have social security numbers already. How many of you are concerned about this? Because they're telling you should be. Smash that like if you would too, please. Let's get this stream out to more people. Look, gosh, I'm so concerned, folks. I am so concerned about this because I think that because Trump actually won in 2024, we think that this problem has been solved. A lot of people in America think that this problem has been solved. I will guarantee you it has not been solved. And if we don't get it corrected before the midterms, you're not going to like what happens. Multiple things need to happen before the midterms. We need to get off our butts in record numbers and vote. We need to drag people with us in record numbers to the polls. You need to get excited about the midterms like Trump is on the ballot. because his whole agenda is, I was talking to somebody today and they were going on about how, it's the uniparty and it's just, they're all the same. Stop for a second. Let me ask you a question. How many of you think that if we had a Democrat Congress and a Democrat Senate, they would be voting along with President Trump? How many of you out there think that there is not a difference between Republicans and Democrats? And how many of you think out there in my loyal, lovely audience, okay, that it's just all the same and that is somehow it was Democrats, we would have the same problems right now? I am so impressed with Mike Johnson right now. I kind of dogged on him in the beginning, but Mike Johnson has kept the Republican caucus together enough. And even John Thune has done the same in the Senate to actually keep and hold the line on the shutdown without caving to the Democrats. And it's the first time in the history of me watching politics that I have ever seen it happen where the Republicans are winning a shutdown battle. Okay? Winning a shutdown battle. We are winning a people, do you understand what I'm saying? We are winning a government shutdown battle. When have you ever seen that happen before? And I did a video on this yesterday. And if you haven't seen it, you need to go back and watch it because you've got to see the polling numbers and everything, how it lays out and how badly the Democrats are losing this battle, which means that they can lose the midterms in an epic fashion. By the way, thank you all for watching the Pete Hegseth video. Yes, I did clickbait it. 100%. You're right. He went too far. Of course, I didn't think he had gone too far, but I was really hoping that some liberals would see it and jump in to watch the video. That's going to be one of my new strategies. Okay, so you can see my thumbnails. And you're going to be like, Neil, what are you saying? No, I want more liberals to actually have to listen to this because they're just warped in their mind, folks. Look at this. I have a guest joining. A wonderful guest, folks. And since we are just talking about New Hampshire in here, let me go back here. Okay. The DOJ has reached out to more than half the states in recent months for voter lists, Stateline reported. Thursday's lawsuits targeted 6 states that have refused to hand over the voter registration data: California, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania. So let's bring in someone from New Hampshire. Heather, you're from New Hampshire. I mean,
I am.
Yeah.
It's really sad seeing like my state listed with like New York and California and like all of these like occupied territories, which I like to refer to them as. But yeah.
Wait, no, Heather, no. You live in New Hampshire. I mean, you guys have a Republican governor. Your previous governor.
Republican.
No. Your previous governor was a Republican.
Republican. He's also commentating on CNN right now. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like he was one of the CNN like spokespeople that they brought on. So, I mean, are we really going to call him a Republican? Because the only thing he was really good on was like vetoing anti-gun legislation. But we also have a few gun manufacturing companies here in the state. So like he was like cornered into like that position from the gun, the Second Amendment standpoint. But yeah, I mean, Chris Sununu vetoed a bill making ivermectin available over the counter after doctors testified. I testified at the Capitol on this bill, and everyone was like, this medicine saved a bunch of lives during COVID. He vetoed it. So as far as I'm concerned, Sununu has blood on his hands, and now Kelly Ayotte, our new Republican, is like
she's not a Republican. I'm telling you, this girl is not a Republican.
No, she's not. She's like walking back her position on like the school stuff and just like the parents' rights stuff. Like, I mean, a lot of it is just we're told what we want to hear on the campaign trail, and then as soon as they get in power, it's like they go the other way. So
Donald, good to see you on the show this morning. You got a
hello. I had to like rush home because like here's the thing with Neil. He'll call me when I'm like sweaty and disgusting on my way back from the gym. and I go to the gym every morning. I'm on East Coast time. He's on Central time. So I'm like driving home from the gym, sweaty and disgusting. And he's like, "Do you want to go live?" I'm like, "Well, when are you going to go live?" He's like, "In like 15 minutes." I was like, no, I don't want to go live right now because I'm covered in sweat. Like sometimes I'll have just gotten out of the sauna and my face is redder than Chris Christie after a flight of stairs. And it's really bad. So like,
Heather, this is
so I
called my
rush
shower
home.
cap. My shower
I
cap.
rush
right here.
home and I have to shower and like throw a little bit of makeup on and get ready just so I can come on and do Neil's lives. But the struggle is real.
The shower cap, Heather. I just throw this hat on. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I wish I had that problem. My hair is still damp because I was like trying to blow dry really fast. So it's like still kind of damp.
It's so funny. My audience is so great, and I love y'all because I come on, I'll come off a hunt. I've got facial hair going everywhere. I've got wings coming out the side of my hat. And my kids actually watch my videos at times, and they think some of them are so funny. So one of their favorites is the Karine Jean-Pierre video. Oh, I need to do a Karine Jean-Pierre video. I have gathered information on her. So good. I'm going to do a Karine Jean-Pierre video. I know she's kind of out of the news, but this one's going to be so good. Anyways, but I did this video. It's got like 1.5 million views or whatever. And my kids were watching it the other day, and Abby goes, "Daddy, I mean, you look really shaggy in that video." I mean, right. I mean, it does. It looks terrible. It looks terrible. It does. But I just don't even care. I just go like, we're just going. Anyways, but Heather, so, New Hampshire has refused to turn over their voter rolls. Tell me a little bit about your Secretary of State in New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, I'm not very fond of really like any of New Hampshire's leadership. Like I can't sit here and tell you like, oh, this person is great. Like as far as I'm concerned, even I liked our GOP chair that we had last year. The new one, I guess, like, I don't know why the new one, first of all, like I've heard he's not friendly toward the Turning Point Action group
Really?
Yeah, I heard like the new GOP chair is not friendly toward them. Just from talks, like I haven't met the new GOP chair. I liked Chris Ager, which was the old one. He's just a really great guy and good friend. So this guy, I don't know a lot about, but it's concerning because as we come into this, new set of elections, are we going to see the GOP and like the Turning Point ballot chasing crowd that's out here right now? Because Turning Point is investing money into the state of New Hampshire to try to flip it. So I'm curious to see if the GOP is actually going to work with them or against them. But we've had a GOP here in New Hampshire that's not been, friendly in the past, I guess, in terms of like local activism and things like that. But
do you know, Heather, I think it's interesting because, obviously for whatever reason, it was one of the videos that got me a big vacation on YouTube. Was when I went live with some folks out in New Hampshire, and it was during the Wyndham Town Hall meeting that they had to hold at the school because it became such a big thing. And so I've really obviously made a lot of contacts out in New Hampshire, yourself, Tom Murray, numerous people, Don, other folks out there. And I take trips out to New Hampshire regularly, working on a documentary out there in New Hampshire right now. And it is absolutely astounding to me because I'm in Minnesota and I expect Minnesota to be corrupt because we're run by corrupt Democrats. Okay. I mean, we got Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, Steve Simon. I mean, we kind of have like the trifecta of evil at our executive branches. But in New Hampshire, it's supposed to be reasonably good. It's all supposed to be Republican leadership. And yet I found this, I'm just going to bring this in now. I'm not going to maybe I'll still make a special video as an upload to get more views, but Wall Street Apes had reposted this, and Tom had talked to me about this before. But New Hampshire Supreme Court Justice Anna Barbara Hans Marconi pled guilty in a high-profile ethics scandal. She's pled guilty, folks. Okay, a week later, she's back on the bench like nothing happened. Okay, and so here's footage of her. Okay, so. And here's the deal. A week after the court found her guilty of trying to influence a criminal case against her husband, New Hampshire Public Authority Director Gino Marconi. It's very clear they did not want to bring witnesses in because they involved so many high-profile public figures. So watch this video. It's only a minute long or so.
All right.
New Hampshire Supreme Court Justice Anna Barbara Hans Marconi returning to her seat on the bench on Wednesday with a smile on her face. Just a week after a court found her guilty of trying to influence a criminal case against her husband, New Hampshire Port Authority Director Gino Marconi.
I think it's completely unprecedented. I don't think you could find a case anywhere where a judge engaged in such serious ethical violations and enters a plea to a criminal charge, and then 2 days later is back on the bench.
Well, she had to recuse herself from the first several cases.
For the record, Justice Hans Marconi is disqualified in this case.
Hans Marconi made it abundantly clear she was ready to be back at work.
Personal risk was the pulmonary embolism.
The charge against the justice stemmed from a private conversation that she had with then Governor Chris Sununu. In a sworn affidavit, Hans Marconi said that Chief Justice Gordon MacDonald had given her permission to meet with Sununu, but in court documents, MacDonald denied that.
It's very clear they did not want to bring witnesses in because they involve so many high-profile public figures. I mean, these are the highest public figures in the state.
This marks the first time in state history that a convicted criminal is sitting on the high court, something one former judge says raises serious concerns.
I mean, the ethical violations are the most severe kinds of ethical violations that a judge can face. It's not only is it unprecedented, it's unconscionable.
Not only unprecedented, folks, but unconscionable. So this is going on in New Hampshire right now, a state that is not willing to give information to the federal government about voter rolls. And we're supposed to just go, oh, yeah, no, everything's above board. We shouldn't have to check the voter rolls.
Well, so here's the thing, and this goes back to the GOP party. So the GOP can get, like, the political parties here in New Hampshire can get access to the voter rolls. So if the Trump DOJ worked with the local GOP leader, they could get access to the voter rolls through that GOP leader.
Well, but what they're
they
looking
obviously-
for, Heather, they need the information, though, that's a little more extensive than just what the GOP gets, because this has the last four of the Social Security numbers on it, because they have to compare it against the federal database to ensure that the illegals aren't voting. So they're looking for more information. And what all these secretaries of states are trying to do is pawn off on us that it's sensitive information. Like, the government issues your freaking Social Security number. That's
a great point. Like, oh, you can't have this voter roll because it contains the last four of their social. Wait a minute, where did they get the social? Oh yeah, the federal government that's asking for the information. That's so funny. So like that right there, that shows you that this has nothing to do with sensitive information, and it has everything to do with cleaning up corruption, right? Like, they don't want the cleaning of the voter rolls. This is the number one way that fraud is committed, is through dirty voter rolls. And, you know, for years, when I was working with True the Vote, I would come on your show and we would talk about all the work that Greg and Catherine were doing to try to clean the voter rolls. And, you know, even, and it's an ongoing process. It's not just like, oh, you clean them one day and it's fixed. It's like every single year when people move from one state to another or one county to another, your name could be on voter rolls in more than one location. And if you're not paying attention to the other states you used to live, someone could be casting a ballot in your name and you'll never know. And then if all of a sudden one day it's learned that your name in a state you used to live cast a ballot, guess who's getting charged with voter fraud? You. And so you actually have your own interest in looking back to all the states where you used to live and be registered to vote and making sure your name is not on those voter rolls, because this is the number one way they commit fraud. And, you know, I remember sitting in on one of the election lawsuits that Catherine was a part of, True the Vote v. Stacey Abrams down in Florida, which was over cleaning the voter rolls. And when Catherine had been on the stand, I'm pretty sure it was Catherine's testimony, she had mentioned that she had used to work for like bigger organizations, like corporate organizations, and corporations used to cultivate their mailing lists, right? Because if you're a for-profit company and you're going to send out a mailer to everyone on a particular list, you want to know how many people on that list are up to date and accurate, because you don't want to be paying postage to mail things out that you don't have to be spending money on. And so there's a lot of emphasis in the corporate world to clean data rolls like this. And so Catherine's argument was always, if we as like if in the private sector, they can cleanse voter rolls and all these, or not voter rolls, but like mailing logs and all these other things, why is that same professionalism and process not being applied in the election world? It's the same thing. And there's really no case for it other than they want to keep our elections dirty, but there's no excuse for it.
Do you know, Heather, do you know what this reminds me of, actually, as you're talking about this? And it's so true. So remember how the voting system companies, Dominion Smartmatic, said we couldn't look at the source code because it was sensitive information, proprietary. This is a freaking adding machine. And they're acting like they have some intellectual property that's just so sensitive. Like, it's my buddy Glenn, who is a computer programmer, told me, I'm like, Glenn, I mean, I have to believe like in a week I could learn how to like program that. He goes, Neil, I could teach you that in a day. He goes, there's nothing that should be proprietary about that. And this is the same crap again. Oh, it's sensitive information. You could. I can't take these people anymore.
I went back and I found one of my interviews that I did when I went on Charlie Kirk's podcast years ago, talking about the 2020 election stuff. And Charlie had brought me on, and one of the very last questions he asked was like, what can we do to make, like, what do we do going forward? Like, what are 3 things that we can do to like to fix things going forward? And one of the things was like, stop contracting out parts of our election processes to these third parties like Dominion, or like what was the other one, Connect, the election software companies.
Yes.
Like any
Runback.
part of our election process, because one of the problems as a journalist that I would face and other journalists face is that when we're doing open records requests and we want to hold everything accountable and we want to do audits and things like that, that's where you get the roadblocks from these third parties that are like, well, we are a third party, we have proprietary information, we don't have to hand stuff over, because now the power from the election shifted from the people we elected or appointed to do it to this third party private entity. And so it's this shield that prevents the people, the public, right, from getting answers for anybody beyond that, public official wall, right? Like once it goes out to all these different companies and contractors and organizations, it's essentially, we can't access it as journalists. And it's much harder to get transparency. And so if there's anything that we should be really fighting for going forward, it's to get all third parties. Like if we're going to have elections, it needs to be run by our government so that we, the people, can audit and access information to verify their work. We can't do that when it's outsourced.
Do you know, here's a question for my audience. Answer me this question, riddle me this. If it was the Biden regime asking the state of Minnesota for this information, do you think that there would be any pushback? Yes or no? Do you think they'd be like, oh, wait, it's sensitive information, we can't give it to Merrick Garland? Because Merrick Garland was so altruistic. I mean, I heard him talking about Merrick time and time again about how Merrick was just so nonpartisan. He was so above board. He was so for the people, so for the Constitution. I can't with this stuff. But here, let me pull this back in quick. I got one more thing we got to get to here. Where is it? Yeah. Protecting your vote. In South Texas, the myth of non-citizen voting takes center stage. This was from ABC News on October 13th in 2024. And again, here we have today, Texas finds thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote on state voter rolls. But see, they told us it was a myth. And that's why the 2020 election was the most safe and secure. How accusations of vote harvesting made a Texas race a national spectacle. Don't ever forget, too, that Texas is where we had the vote harvesting. I think that gal had collected over 8,000 votes, wasn't it? And she had made how much money? And Ken Paxton had prosecuted her. That case was back in I think that came out in 2021. When that prosecution. Okay, Cecilia Castanelo. They always start with this human story of some Spanish woman awoke to the sound of her doorbell in the early hours of August 20th. The South Texas sky outside her Atascosa home was still dark, but as she emerged from her bedroom, her curlers in place, a robe draped over her shoulders, a light cut across her foyer. Two voices on the other side of her front door announced themselves. Police department. I came to the front and I actually looked out through the window and they were shining a flashlight in my window. So they'll start with this, home, because every conservative doesn't like home invasions. So this is how they'll start this kind of stuff. They confiscated her phone and asked her to write down her PIN. They were searching for evidence of so-called vote harvesting and opaque provision of a 2021 voter integrity bill championed by the state's Republican governor, Greg Abbott, and enforced by its controversial attorney general, Ken Paxton. Remember when we got to meet Ken Paxton out in D.C.? That was awesome. Anyways, both men have characterized the law as SB1 as a safeguard against non-citizen voting. So here's what they do. They create a boogeyman, some sort of straw man argument, and then we find out the truth. And this is what the liberal media has done time and time again to us, what they continue to do to us, and it's all crap, and I'm sick of it.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Well, on the bright side, it's nice to actually have an administration that's actually pursuing the voter rolls and like looking to make, I mean, that's a victory in and of itself, right? Is that the curlers in her hair is a nice touch. That's pretty funny. Oh God. I don't know why, but that just reminded me of when like Nancy Pelosi's husband had the police show up there or something like that. And it wasn't there like some like weird naked dude in his house or like
Yes. Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
The whole thing was weird. This
Yeah,
guy, Pappy, always makes these comments. Robe draped seductively over her shoulder.
Wait, where were they? Were they showing up to Nancy Pelosi's house?
That is unbelievable. But Heather, one state that you probably focused on more than any other was Georgia, and we still to this day have not seen the ballots from the state of Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's
Still.
I don't know how that's even going to get to go forward at this point because is the federal government going to be allowed access to the ballots? I don't know because of that whole, the states are left up to the elections kind of thing. So there's like election law is one of the worst there is because of that fact where states are supposed to run their elections, but then also elections impact federal races. So the federal government has some sort of, claim to the process, but like the whole thing from a legal standpoint is like a nightmare. And this is why so many people don't like touching it, but we need more attorneys out there to really start combing through the books and, practicing election law. But I don't know if we're ever going to see those ballots in Georgia. They were unsealed years ago, but we've never been allowed to touch them since. And I remember covering that lawsuit and like being in the courtroom as it was going on. I was like one of the only reporters. I'm like, how am I one of the only reporters covering a case that's like, the unsealing of over 100,000 ballots in a state that was won by about 11 or 1,200 votes, or 11 or 12,000 votes rather, like, but nobody else is covering it, but it's so significant. And the judge unsealed the ballots, and then Fulton County hired a guy named Don Samuel to be their attorney. And when I started digging into him, I found out he taught a white collar criminal defense course at one of the local universities. And then he also represented, oh God, he was an NFL player that had commit like a double homicide or something. And he taught, like, he basically was a criminal.
Baltimore Ravens player, I bet.
Yeah, he was one of the top 10 criminal defense lawyers in Georgia, and Fulton County hired him in a civil case to unseal ballots. So I'm like, why would you hire a criminal lawyer for this unless you had some sort of crime you were looking to legally, protect yourself from, basically.
Yeah.
And so that was years ago, and it's just we've never gotten to touch those ballots, but
Well, I know because we constantly had Garland on for interviews while that whole case was going on, and then we were granted access to low resolution. And the problem
Images.
was,
well,
yeah,
I also heard that those low resolution images, and this is like I'm dusting off files from forever ago in my brain, but that supposedly the machines actually created higher resolution images, but that somebody had set the machines to record the images at a lower resolution.
so
So almost like it was deliberately set that way to make it so that the images would be less auditable from a forensic standpoint.
my understanding on that, if I recall it, was that we were there were high resolution images, but they only would give Garland's team the low resolution images. And the problem with
I
that
didn't hear about that.
The problem with that was that the low resolution images. So the sworn affidavits, the witnesses were attesting to the fact that there were perfect ovals, basically like they were filled in by a computer. So then you go to a low resolution image, and I mean they were extremely low resolution. I mean, I work in photography, videography. I mean, I'd done that for years, and they were very low resolution images. I mean, no image that I could work with, especially at that time. There wasn't any AI tool to help me, build that out. And even so, there's like Topaz AI, and you can build images out to a larger size, but oftentimes they get the lines wrong. So they struggle with lines. I don't know what it is, but they'll create like it's just weird artifacting and pixelation, and it's just junk. So you need the original image, and we weren't able to get those. But really, what we needed to see was the actual ballots themselves. But it's super sensitive, even though there's no name attached to the ballot. It's super sensitive, Heather. I just want you to know.
Oh God, I would like to see way more. Like, I just don't know what the Trump team, like, I know they're battling a mountain of corruption,
It's ridiculous.
and I think like we can all get ahead of ourselves and like want more quicker. And I'm trying to be like, give them grace, because like we can see how bad it is just from like the outskirts of everything and covering the outskirts of everything. But then once you actually get like in the swamp and you are now like literally like up to your neck in corruption, you don't know who at your agency you can trust or not trust, you don't know what files and papers that you're combing through are like fraudulent or real, and you pretty much got to start from like square one. And I think that's why with the whole Epstein thing, like the DOJ went back and interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell and all this stuff, because I think the only way to actually get to the truth now that we have our government back is to restart a lot of these investigations and work from the ground up. Like, we know certain things, but I mean, the corruption there's been so deep for so long, like especially on the Epstein stuff, like I had no faith there was going to be anything of substance left over, especially if it implicated a lot of people and it's a blackmail operation. Why wouldn't you scrub that if you're the bad guys in control about to hand it reins over to someone who's gonna out you for that, right? Like, you're gonna use that and keep that in your pocket, and you're gonna try to thwart any actual exposure of like what's really going on, because if nobody knows and you control that information, you control the people that are implicated in the Epstein files. And so I think there's a lot of that at play.
Well,
But
we were talking just the other day, Heather, and just what in the world Kash Patel and Dan Bongino got themselves into, I've always respected Dan Bongino. I loved his podcasts, and again,
I love Dan.
I'll never forget how he interacted with my daughter and how he spoke to her, and how he encouraged her. And he's just the real deal. And for him to give up everything he gave up to go work at the FBI. And I watched an interview with him the other day, and he said, I just feel like I was born to this. And he's really having fun. Operation Summer Heat, and getting criminals off the streets, stopping drug trade, all that stuff. And I know Dan understands the election issues. And so I'm just, this whole thing is going to play out more and more. I asked on this channel, Heather, and the comments right there said it all. I said, how many of you believe we're going to see significant indictments and arrests? And you know what? By far, 80% of my audience was like, it's not going to happen. And yet here we are. Here we are. I started with that LaMonica McIver. And then it went to now we've got Comey, and I hear Brennan's coming in next.
I mean, with all the stuff that Tulsi Gabbard is putting out too, I would not be surprised if Obama caught a charge.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm waiting for that day, man. That just lock him up in prison. I want to go full bore. I'm just like, let's clean house. Get him out of here.
That's right, Karen. They tried to actually steal our country from us. They still are. I mean, I don't know.
Legitimately are.
The criminality of it all is insane. But
the crazy thing too, did you hear about that story where there was like an illegal immigrant that was a cop? And like the fact that there's illegal immigrants that are allowed to become law enforcement officers. Yeah, that was in Chicago, but there's also been like examples of that in California as well.
I thought California too. Yeah, I'd heard that.
Yeah, and I'm like, how is that not a national security threat, allowing foreign citizens to operate as law enforcement in a country that they don't pledge an oath to? Like, that's just wild to me.
Yeah, oh, check this out. We've got a troll. I love it. We've managed to get a troll. Charlie the Antichrist Kirk is a popular Halloween costume. They've had other dumb comments, so watch me just put them in a timeout.
You know what I was thinking about the other day, actually, since they brought up Charlie, and it just like somebody, you know how disgustingly corrupt Chicago is? Like, and it's been that way for a long time, right? Guess where Charlie was from?
Chicago?
Yeah. So, like, think about that for a second. One of the most greatest warriors that we have came out of a place of like surrounded by corruption. I mean, it's just like a testament to God and how he can, things can look bad, but I mean, even in the midst of all of that, right? Like Chicago's probably one of those places where their schools and their media and everything was corrupt longer than most, and yet Charlie rose from that environment and went on to be like one of the biggest fighters against it. And so that kind of gives me hope that even when things do get bad, it was like the 2020 election stuff. Think about how many more people under the pressure of a 4-year Biden administration rose up to the challenge of like fighting against it. And so in this weird sort of like parallel thing that's going on, it's like every time something bad happens, it transcends into like massive pushback for good.
I think like the greatest thing that I've learned through all of this, and I don't know, in my audience and what you've seen, but I've seen this so clearly. Everything the Democrat Party is doing. Is that your dog?
Yeah, he's eating something he's not supposed to be. He's gonna say hi.
There's your puppy.
Puppies are good for views.
I've just consistently seen, and I guess it's been the most encouraging thing, is that everything the Democrat Party has meant for evil has turned around for good.
Yep.
They lose on everything. Everything that they do backfires against them. So,
yeah.
Oh, we're getting lots of dog comments. Cute dog.
Subscribe. He's such a cutie. We rescued him over the summer. And poor little thing was living in a little shelter for like the first 6 months of his life. And then we gave him a beautiful home. I would adopt like 100 dogs if I could. Oh, he's JP.
Dogs are great. Dogs and horses. I love it when I go out west and I'm elk hunting. I mean, there's and I'm always there, and it's during roundup time, right? They're bringing the cattle down from the mountains, and it's cattle, dogs, and horses. And there are two animals that really have great bonds are dogs and horses. So
I just love that dog spelled backwards is God, and they both love you unconditionally, and they're just amazing.
yeah. Always excited to see you. Anyhow, well, folks, we've covered the news, and there's a dog in the show. Our outro is the puppy. So, folks, thanks for joining us. I think it's exciting that these things are being found out and exposed continually, and that actual action is being taken. So, we'll see you on the next episode. Remember, subscribe if you're new, and remember to go check out my sponsor, MyPillow, mypillow.com/.
Yeah, and leave a comment if you want to see more appearances by my dog here, Ollie.
Peace out, folks.